Alright, here's the screencast for 2.1. So we're talking about segments and angles. A segment bisector literally cuts into two congruent parts. That's what the word bisector means. Bi is two and sector is to cut. So bisectors cut into two equal parts. The midpoint is the point on the segment that divides into two congruent segments. So this means M is the midpoint, right? Point M. And since it's two congruent segments, that means the length AM is equal to the length BM, which means segment AM is congruent to segment BM. So segment bisector is a segment line ray plane that intersects a segment at its midpoint. So it's going through my midpoint M. So this line, so M is midpoint once again. And then this line, CD, is the bisector. Okay, so in the following diagram, name the midpoint and segment bisector. Well, C is going to be the midpoint. And then line L is bisector, because it's the thing that's doing the cutting. The thing that's doing the cutting is going to be the line, and that's what we call the bisector. So this is the bisector because it's going through my midpoint C. All right, M is the midpoint of each segment. Find the segment lengths. So if the overall length, so M is the midpoint. This means I cut it exactly into half. Hence the two tick marks that mean congruent, that mean equal length. So if the whole length is 26, and I divide it into two equal parts, that means each is 13. So AM is 13 and MB is 13. Once again, here P is the midpoint. So if RP is 7, and wait, these two segments are congruent, that means PS is also 7. So PS, and then we want RS. So RS is the whole thing. So RS is going to be 14. So you could do 7 plus 7, or you could do 7 times 2. So this is the midpoint, is E. So if 18 is the whole length, divide by 2. That means DE is 9 and EF is 9. Because a midpoint cuts our whole segment into two congruent parts. Two parts that have the same length. Okay. And then find, okay, so N is the midpoint. If this length is 11, that means this length must be 11 as well, because N is the midpoint and I have two congruent lengths. And then if I want the total, M to P, 11 plus 11 is going to be 22. All right, M is the midpoint of JK. Find the value of the variable. So this, we're saying that it's the midpoint, right? We're saying that this is the midpoint. So because I cut it into two congruent segments, that means they are going to be equal. I can set x minus 14 equal to 33. So x is 47. So those little like numbers underneath, it's saying the length, right? So over here, the 16R and the 48, this 16R is how long J to M is. And this 48 is how long M to K is. And because this is the midpoint and I have two congruent segments, I can set them equal to each other. Divide by 16. R is going to be 3. L is a segment bisector of AB. Find the value of x. Okay, segment bisector, which means M is a midpoint. So because we said it's a segment bisector, that means it has to go through the midpoint, which consequently means that these two segments are going to be congruent. So I set 5x equal to 35. Divide by 5 on both sides, and x is 7. And that's what I'm supposed to find is the value of x. Algebra review. Like terms are terms in expression that have the same variable, combination of variables with the same power. Constants, such as 5 and -2, are also like terms. Simplify each of the following expressions by combining like terms. So here, these are the only terms with x. 3x minus 6x is -3x. And then I have plus 5 and plus 1, so it's going to be 3x plus 6. Now over here, xy, negative 2xy. So I'm just having the same variable or the same combination of variables with the same power. Those are like terms. 3xy minus 2xy is just going to be 1xy. I don't have to write the 1, right? If we don't write a coefficient, it's assumed to be 1. And then this is the only x I have, and this is the only like plain y I have. Over here, x squared, 1 plus 4x squared is 5x squared. I only have the 1 plain x. And then I have minus 1, minus 9, so that's going to be minus 10. I meant to do that in green. That way it's different colors for you. Negative 10. Okay. And lastly, all of these are x. So what I need to do is make a common denominator. So I have x over 5, x over 1, x over 2. So what would be great is, let's see, 5, 1, and 2. Least common denominator is 10. So multiply this one by 2 over 2, multiply by 10 over 10, and multiply by 5 over 5. That way I have 2x over 10 plus 10x over 10 minus 5x over 10. You could write it this way, combine all the top, all over 10. Either way is fine. 2x plus 10 is 12. 12 minus 5 is 7x over 10. Awesome. And midpoint formula. So, the midpoint is literally you're taking the average x value, and this is the average of the y value, because you're adding the two together and then dividing by 2. So definitely highlight this for yourself. Find the coordinates and then make a sketch. Okay, so I'm going to write out x2 plus x1 over 2, y2 plus y1 over 2. So let's plug in my x's. 1 plus 7 over 2. And then my y's. 2 plus 4 over 2. So this is going to be equal to 8 over 2, comma 6 over 2. So if I simplify that out, it's going to be 4, comma 3. Awesome. So this is the coordinate of the midpoint. This is going to be the point that's halfway between A and B. So point A is at 1, comma 2. Point B is 7, comma 4. If I would draw a line connecting those, I should have this point 4, comma 3, which is right here, right in the middle. This is the midpoint. Also means that the two segments are going to be congruent. And then part B, let's plug in again. So I'm taking my two x's and adding them together, dividing by 2, comma my two y's, adding them together and then dividing by 2. So for my x's, I have 3 over 2, and for my y's, I have 2 over 2. So I can simplify this a little more. I could say 3 over 2, comma 1. I could also say 1.5, comma 1. Either one of these are fine because they're equal. Okay, let's plot our 2 points. So I have negative 2, comma 3, and 5, comma negative 1. If I connect those with a line, my point should be on there. So 1.5, comma, let's see, 2, 3, okay. Did not draw this the nicest. Actually, no, this it's close enough, whatever. So 1.5 is about right here because it's halfway between 1 and 2, and then this is the y value of 1. So this is my midpoint, which means that these two segments are congruent. Find the coordinates of the midpoint of PR. So we're just doing this whole thing again. Add the two x's together, divide by 2. Add the two y's together, divide by 2. I have 6 over 2 and 4 over 2. So this is 3, comma 2. add your x's together. Remember, x1 plus x2 over 2. And see, the order doesn't matter, because if you're adding, if I take 1 plus 2, it's the same thing as 2 plus 1. So commutative property of addition, as long as you're adding your two x's together, you'll get the same answer. So negative 3 plus 5, 0 plus 6, take a 2 over 2, comma 6 over 2, this is 1, comma 3. And that's it for the first lesson.